folks, Coach Pete here. Welcome to your weekly show on looking inside real estate world and the world of finance. And I'm joined by Mike Conlon, who is an expert in this field. Mike, welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me, Coach Pete. I appreciate it.
Yeah, now let's go over your background. Where did you get started, not just in real estate, but where did you get started in the financial world?
Sure. I have a pretty varied background, which is interesting. I got my law degree from the University of Minnesota. Never quite used that a lot, although I use it quite a bit now with our real estate stuff. But I also got in the financial planning world after that, and I owned a broker-dealer where we grew the sales from $1 million to $40 million, and we sold it to a big insurance company, which was great. And then I had my own financial planning practice, like you do, obviously. I had about $100 million in client assets, had about 500 clients, and I sold that in 2002.
Okay. And so you retired in 2002 from the financial world, which is amazing. How old were you at that time?
I was only 42 at that point in time.
Yeah, pretty nice. Okay. So, building something is important. I think a lot of folks watching this podcast, watching this show here, will be amazed at how easy it is, but also how hard it is and how you can stumble if you do the wrong thing. So direction is important, and having a coach on your side is the most important thing when you look at investing in real estate.
Absolutely. And I think, my background with the legal and the financial planning and now full-time in real estate the last 13 years gives me sort of a unique perspective for people to, really teach them how to do it. And if they really want to fulfill their dreams of, being financially independent and things like that, I can help them.
Now, you've got a group, and it's called Affordable Communities Group.
Correct.
Explain to the viewer what that is and how important it is for someone to be a member of a team like that.
Yeah, Affordable Communities Group is the name of our company that currently I own 25 mobile home parks with about 4,000 spaces. And so that's my real estate entity. And, I started in the business, and again, a unique perspective is that I did the apartment business first, and mid-sized apartment complexes primarily in Orlando, and I've transitioned in 2006 over to mobile home parks.
Okay, well, during that transitional period, let's go back to when you first started.
Yeah.
And by the way, you wrote a book called Unconventional Wealth. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I'm sure some of the things that we're talking about today will be in that book.
Yep.
If you could identify 2 or 3 of the mistakes you made at the beginning, what would they have been?
Well, there's a lot of them, unfortunately, because I just didn't know what I was doing. The one thing I take credit for is I was always somebody who was willing to take action. And, we talk about real estate. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, got super excited and took action and bought my first apartment complex. And that really spurred me on. But the mistakes I made, and I go through in my book more detail, but, buying in the wrong markets, overpaying for a couple deals, not understanding who your clientele is, just on and on. I made everyone in the book. I was fortunate to get through it and really excelled in afterwards.
So not understanding who your clientele is. Let's talk about that. I mean, what kind of mistakes can you make doing that? Is it just not doing a good target focus on the market, or is it trying to do the shotgun approach where you think everyone is a good fit?
Yeah, it was sort of the shotgun approach. And, real estate's all about location. Yep. So you really got to do your study. And when you get into the properties, the mistake I made, I was a little too cheap early on, and I didn't do the full due diligence, and it cost me in a couple deals.
So due diligence is something you do before you put money in.
Absolutely.
And you usually pay a team to do research on the feasibility that you're going to have the occupancy or be able to sell something or get an increase in what you're putting in, right?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
And in the apartment side, the overall physical condition of the building. And when you're down in Orlando, just a prime example is the first property we bought had flat roofs. Terrible for storms, hurricanes, whatever, and I paid the price for that.
My first condo that I lived in college after I got out of dorms was a condo complex that had flat roofs.
Yeah.
And I remember I was renting from somebody, and he was living in the same condo as I was, and I remember hearing him hit the roof when he got the assessment letter because every one of them was leaking because the water didn't go anywhere, right?
Exactly.
And that's something people don't think about.
Yeah, when you have a 90-unit apartment complex, you really don't want to have a lot of flat roofs. That's a good idea.
Especially if it's an apartment complex because you can't give assessments to anyone. You could try to raise the rent, but then people will leave.
The assessment comes back to me at that stage, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what are some of the unconventional ideas you've employed in your business?
In my business, I think the unconventional ideas are just, going sort of against the grain, and I talk about my book that I think it's an 80-20 world now where 80% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, they're struggling. But I think there's an opportunity if you treat those customers right to really make a business with that clientele. But, those people are usually used to being beat down or trod upon or misused maybe.
Right.
And if you treat them well, they're just really loyal clients. And so that's where I tell people to focus is, the world's all about STEM right now, science, tech, engineering, and math. I have none of those skills, so I'm sort of out of luck there. And I was sort of forced to find another place to go.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, everyone out there that's watching this or is coming out of college or even going into college needs somewhere to live.
Correct.
And most people, unfortunately, can't afford to buy something right away.
Correct.
Or maybe never these days, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't want to.
Correct.
Yeah, Harry Dent, who's a famous economist,
Yep.
a Harvard-educated economist, he's renting now because he doesn't trust the real estate market.
Yeah.
So he said, I'd rather rent from somebody else and let them take the burden of paying the property taxes and the price fluctuations of the real estate.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's become renter nation, as we all know. I mean, the younger generation sort of saw their parents go through the housing bust, and they're not sold on home ownership. And I think that's going to take a long time to swing to the other direction.
Now, you went to law school, so
Yep.
you spent 7 years in college. And I didn't go to law school, but I spent time at college.
Exactly.
But in one of your unconventional ideas, you think that college might be a waste of time for many people.
Well, I think it's changed a lot in the last 15 years. I mean,
Yep.
the cost has gone up 300-400% in the last 15, 20 years. And you have to be laser focused now. And colleges way oversell what their degree is going to do for you. I think some of the public schools in North Carolina offer great deals. I'm very anti-private school. I think it's way too much
Yep.
money. But, doing a community college for 2 years and, transferring over to a state school is a great way to go. But you just can't do the philosophy, human arts, that type of thing. You need to be laser focused on what you're trying to do.
Well, that's what I've said for years and of course, I learned this the hard way. I went to college, started right away. The undergrad, first year freshman, paid more attention to the bars than I did the classroom.
Didn't we all?
Right? And because when I started college, drinking age was 18.
Yep.
And so, you know where I went.
Absolutely.
But if I would have had it to do over again, and of course my dad's a college professor, so I was encouraged to go to college right away.
Yeah.
But if I had it to do over again, I would have done 2 years at a community college.
Yep.
Got the core classes out of the way, transferred into and also not only get the core classes out of the way, but you get more of an idea of what you want to be and what you want
Correct.
to do.
Yeah.
And then transfer to a college that actually had a program that fit what I was looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a lot
And
of
you
sense.
think about community college is 25% of the cost for the exact same courses that the state school has.
And I think more individualized attention. I had classrooms that had 300 or 400 people in there.
Yeah,
At
absolutely.
University of North Carolina. So
Yeah.
when you talk about community colleges, maybe you got 40 or 50 people.
Correct.
And you got more time to spend with the teachers, and you have a better peer group, and people, there's not as much partying going on because
Yeah.
you're living at home with mom and dad.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure
Saving
it's
more money.
Yeah, saving money.
Yep.
Putting money away. Now, another thing that costs people a lot of money, especially when they're young, is getting married when they shouldn't get married, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I know you're right about that.
And I think it's, the old thing, our parents' generation is, you're married by 25 or whatever. And,
Yep.
life expectancies now are so much different in the fact that the chance of you or a young person nowadays living to 85 is really strong.
Yep.
And why would you want to get married before 30 at the minimum, especially because the world is so much more difficult job-wise. You need to be settled financially before you get married.
Well, and you need to know if you get along, because
Yeah,
divorce rates are
absolutely.
over 50% nowadays.
Correct.
And so people who aren't quite getting along say, let's get married, everything will be better.
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite, isn't it?
Big mistake.
We have the same-sex marriage issue that's
Yeah.
been up here, and I've talked to a divorce attorney the other day. He's known some couples that were together same-sex marriage-wise. I mean, they were just living together, right?
Yeah.
The minute they were able to get married, divorces started piling up.
Big time.
We had a couple that they were together unconventionally. They were
Yeah.
together for 15 years. As soon as they were able to get married, they were divorced. They were filed for divorce in 6 months.
Isn't it crazy?
So be careful what you wish for, I guess.
Absolutely.
Because that's pooling finances. That's a business arrangement too. It's not just a love arrangement. And a lot of times, money and love don't mix.
Correct. And you think about the number one issue in any marriage, especially when it's starting out, is money.
Yeah,
and
sure
that's the
is.
biggest argument. And
I
if
think
you
it never goes away too.
and
does it?
unfortunately, it doesn't. But I think you need to have some financial stability. It makes your chances of succeeding at marriage a lot higher.
Again, Mike Conlin is the author of Unconventional Wealth, an excellent book available on Amazon. Now, you talk about some unconventional business ideas. Let's
Correct.
talk about them.
I went into an unconventional business in mobile home parks. I really didn't even know what they were before 2005, and I saw the need for affordable housing and that group of people that if you really treat them well and you create a really nice community, the business is awesome. Yep. I got guys who've made a ton of money in used tire business, which I didn't even know exists, pawn shops, other things that, you don't they're not taught in school. You got to sort of stumble upon those
When
things.
I think of pawn shops, I think of the show I see on TV all
Correct.
the one from Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Or there's one in Detroit, which is where they have a lot of fights in that one, right?
Absolutely.
But the one in Vegas is a professional place, it seems like, and a lot of money's made on both ends. People selling something to the pawn shop, and then the pawn shop selling it to somebody else.
And what's interesting about the pawn shop is the number one business there are small loans. And some of these bigger pawn shops, especially here in North Carolina, they'll have, anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in loans, with the average loan just over $100.
Yeah.
And they're basically
Small
providing
loan.
a need for the poorer community to get access to credit.
So the term called micro loans, that's like a
Correct.
micro loan right there, isn't
Yeah.
it? All right, now you focus on real estate investing.
Correct.
And, I know you, and I'm a financial guy too. And to me, I know some financial planners who invest in a couple, like a beach property or something like
Yep.
that. But how did you decide to, I know you sold your business and you
Yep.
got bored probably, right? At 42, you got to do something.
Yeah.
But how did you decide to get into real estate, and how can people out there, take those same ideas and principles to maybe invest themselves?
It's interesting because the first book that really struck me when I was looking at the real estate market was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, who I know you're going to meet.
Yeah, real good guy too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that book really changed my life. The whole thing about passive investing, sort of making money while you sleep, and depreciation, which is really tax deferral.
Yep.
Those concepts I wasn't really familiar with, and that sort of changed my whole way of thinking. And, when I was in financial planning business, like you know very well, it's a hard business. You work
is.
really long hours, and clients can be somewhat demanding. And real estate, to me, seemed like an easier route, although there's a lot of pitfalls in real estate, too.
Yeah, but we look at now, one of the drawbacks of real estate investing, especially if you're in a high tax area, is paying the taxes each and every year.
Correct.
But you can write them off too, so it becomes another write-off, doesn't it?
Correct, yeah. And the one thing with real estate, you really need to understand your tax situation, because there are various things you can write off, and depreciation, which is really a phantom expense, doesn't exist, as like a gift from God almost, and the government, obviously, eventually you're going to have to pay the tax, but you can defer that for many years, which really helps build up some wealth.
Now, it's one thing to buy books, read books, try to study, go to seminars, try to find out how to do something, but the number one way to make money in America or in the world is to take action. And that's what you
Absolutely.
did, right? What was your first action step when you got into real estate?
After I read the book, I bought this 8-unit apartment complex in Wisconsin. It was only $300,000, which is not even a house today.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
But I just, I sort of figured it out, and we learned by doing it. And I started small, so if I made a mistake, it wasn't going to be a huge mistake. And, we only owned it a year because we realized nobody was moving to Wisconsin. And so
Wonder why.
Exactly. The winters are beautiful. But we moved to Orlando, where obviously it was booming back in the early 2000s.
It's a big move from Wisconsin to Orlando.
It was.
Now, the first, that 8-unit apartment complex, you got a pretty good deal. Did you sell it? Did you make money on it? Or at least when you were holding it, did you break even? How'd you come out on that?
It cash flowed every single month,
Yep.
which is really the number one thing you want to do. And the number one tip I talk about is you got to buy it right. And we bought it right. And we didn't make great money, because usually real estate's a long-term hold, but we made some money on the sale, and the cash flowed every month.
So it's buying it right, and that's the most important thing. And I see a lot of people get caught up in these shows on TV where they're
Correct.
flipping houses, and because of that, the prices at the auctions are going up.
Big time.
And so it is still important these days to find the hidden gems, isn't it?
It is. I'm buying 2 mobile home parks. I'm actually closing on them this month, and they're both foreclosure deals,
Yep.
which are harder and harder to find now, because we're getting to that edge of the cycle, or that step of the cycle, where it's getting frothy again, and you got to be really careful when you make a purchase right now.
So what you're going to do as a turnaround king, you're going to come in and let everyone know it's under new management.
Correct.
And you're going to improve things.
Yep.
And you'll get occupancy up. Now,
Absolutely.
And so I guess the reason they went bankrupt is they didn't have enough people paying the rent they were supposed to be paying.
Yeah, and they overpaid for it in the beginning.
Yeah,
They
overpaid.
bought them in 06, 07 when the
Oof.
cycle was high again,
Yep.
and they just could never get over the hump that way.
Well, folks, this has been Unconventional Wealth, and it's your show looking inside the financial world, the real estate world, and each week Mike's going to be with us going through some case studies, some tips, and some ways to make money in the real estate world. Mike, I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, Coach Pete. Thanks.
And folks, we'll see you next week here on Unconventional Wealth.